too. I think everybody got places.
Do what?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna pray. That's what I heard. I was waiting for somebody to say something profound.
Let's get it.
Okay, well, my name is Robert Henderson, my partner Dustin Trader. We are both with Mortgage and Capital Markets. We've had the honor and privilege of acting as a financial advisor for the Phelps system, gosh, even before I joined the firm. That's how long we've been doing it. I've been working with Phelps for 35 years now, Dusty for 20 years, but our firm had been the financial advisor working with the system even before I joined the firm. As you know, we have been working with staff on putting together a financing for a total of $13.5 million worth of bonds to finance your next capital improvement projects. There are two things we want to talk about this morning. First and foremost, there was a resolution that was presented to the City Council of Floresville on November the 10th, and it was written in such a way that it had not only approving the form and content of the official statement, but requiring that they more closely than historically has been the case, review it and certify as to the information in there. A couple of council members objected, and frankly, I don't disagree with them. And I think Mr. Prost would say the same thing, and I'll let Marcy speak for herself. The resolution was written in a little different way. It put a little higher level of onus on the commissioners, council members rather, to certify what was in the official statement. The official statement was not pre-delivered to the city, which the city manager justifiably, objected to. So they tabled the motion and asked us to bring it back. It will go before the city council this evening. They have now the documents and have an opportunity to review them, ample opportunity to review them. As we have said last week, as we have said in written correspondence, these are drafts of the preliminary official statement. There's continuing comments are being made, but there's not going to be any substantive changes to the documents between what the city council has then and what they will approve tonight and what we will ultimately go into the marketplace with. So I think we're fine there. We did need to, there's a change in dates, come back to your board and ask you guys to certify, again, request the city of Floresville to possibly take action on the council on the meeting tonight. So that's the first thing. That's really primarily why we're here. Now, the second thing, Mr. Traylor is going to be much better at explaining this than I am, because he lives and breathes numbers and computers and that sort of thing. When we first, several weeks ago, began discussing the various alternatives with respect to how you structure this transaction with Marcy and Mark, we talked about something that has historically been very important to the city of Floresville, which is the ability to issue the debt on what's called qualified tax exempt obligation basis. Under the Financial Reform Act of 1986, a long time ago, Dan Raskin Council put that into place. There is a different tax treatment for transactions that are under $10 million versus over $10 million. And very simply put, what it does is it allows regional banks to write off their cost of carry in addition to as an expense against the interest income they get from those tax-exempt bonds. But it only applies to issuers who issue less than $10 million in a calendar year. So every time Phelps has come to the city of Floresville and talk about issuing debt, there's always this conversation about how much does Phelps want to issue, how much does the city of Floresville want to issue, what's the relative timing between those transactions, and keeping the transactions under $10 million. Again, because we can get slightly lower interest rates on pieces of the qualified tax exempt obligations. Having explained all that to Mark and to Marcy, of course Marcy is very familiar with it, Dusty Trader instigated conversations with the financial advisor over at the city, and we were working out what the city's plans were, both calendar year 2022, calendar year 2023. A strategy, because you are looking at doing over $10 million worth of debt for a total of $13.5 million, is that we could also break this transaction into two pieces. One is $10 million or less and get the additional tax benefits, and another piece that picks up the slack, in this case $3,750,000, and get slightly lower interest rates on one. Now, as we explained to Mark and Marcy, 2 transactions cause some modest increase in fees. A lot of the fees associated with these transactions are based on a per bond basis. In other words, are based on the total amount of debt that's being issued. But there are some minimum fees having to do with bond attorneys, attorney general's office, our fees, so forth. So there is some economies of scale of doing a $13.5 million, a single $13.5 million transaction versus breaking them into 2 transactions. So the question becomes, are we saving enough money on the qualified taxes and qualification status of the $10 million transaction to justify the slightly higher cost of issuance? The last thing, this is what Dusty's really going to be more apt to speak about, positioned to speak about, is market conditions. What are the tax advantages of a QTO interest rate savings in this market versus last market? Dusty was the lead underwriter on Alma Community College transactions earlier this week. It just happened. Yes, sir.
I didn't understand, what was the city of Floresville's objection to us doing what we first presented?
This year, nothing. Once Dusty had communicated with the city, their financial advisor indicated that their transaction would occur in 2023. So as long as we did $10 million or less, or as long as we conducted a transaction that was going to occur in 2022, they had no objection. So that gave us the opportunity to say, okay, let's rush and put this $10 million piece in before the end of 2022 to get this greater tax advantage situation. So they did not offer an objection this time. In years past, when you were considering a $7 or $8 million transaction, they were considering a $4 or $5 million transaction, and 2 transactions in the aggregate totaled over $10 million. Then we had some timing issues where one of the 2 entities had to wait to a different calendar year in order to issue the debt.
A lot of the amount.
But was Mr. Aiken's questions more in line with what was their objection last week?
What, yeah, this past week, why did they object?
Yeah.
What they objected to last week was they were being asked to pass a resolution that had them certifying that they had reviewed the preliminary official statement.
And they hadn't seen it.
And they had not seen it. It had not been delivered to them before the meeting started, which I think, again, is a valid complaint. I can't find any objection to that. So,
I mean, we would have the same reservation if you presented something to us that day and go, you gotta give us an answer today. I mean,
right.
We got into that.
Perfectly reasonable objection. I don't think any of us risk of speaking for Mark while he's not here. He has also articulated that he didn't understand that that's what they were being asked to do, and he would not object. He found no objection to their objection.
Okay.
So, having said that, the last thing I was going to say before I turn it over to Dusty is that market conditions change every day. And as I started saying, Dusty had the opportunity earlier this week to be the book-running senior underwriter on the Alamo area college system, and just hit the market perfect on Tuesday, where the market moved substantially towards us in terms of lower interest rates overall. And I've got a piece on my cell phone that talks about how that bond rally that occurred on Tuesday extended through close of business yesterday. So the decisions to do 2 transactions versus 1 transaction, timing with respect to the potential change in the Federal Reserve Fund's policies as they do their open markets committee decisions to raise short-term rates. We're all familiar with what's going on with inflation and what the Federal Reserve Board is doing to try to keep that inflation under control. So the markets are changing, and they changed a lot just this last Thursday when we were at the City Council. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dustin.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Roll that thing forward. I'm
all right.
Hearing it's on weird names.
How about this? Okay? Great, thank you. The presentation that we put out before you it talks a little bit about what Bob has discussed here. I think I might they'll just kind of walk us through the presentation itself, page by page, and to kind of get to the market conditions themselves. So if you'll turn with me to page number 3 which is under tab 1, looks like this. What we have on this page is two things. On the left side, we just kind of have a little dialogue, 4 bullet points around the upcoming financing that Bob has kind of outlined. Phelps Capital Improvement Plan contemplates the need to finance approximately $13.5 million. One option considered to finance these projects will be to issue approximately $9.75 million in 22 and the remaining $3.75 in 23 in order to take advantage of the BQ rates as Bob outlined for those issuers that sell less than $10 million of tax-exempt obligations in a calendar year. BEQ rates have historically been lower than traditional tax-exempt. However, consideration also needs to be given to the estimated additional issuance costs associated with breaking the transaction into 2 separate financings. Another option would be to have one single issuance in the amount of approximately $13.5 million. If we did that, of course, none of the issue would qualify for that bank qualified treatment. It would all just simply be tax-exempt interest rates. The current timetable calls for the bonds to be sold on December 8th. At such time, it's our expectation that you guys would have a meeting that afternoon for your board to approve the sale, and then for the city council that night, because they also have to approve the sale, for the city council to also approve that sale that evening. Okay. And then over here on the right side of the page is just a snapshot of what the cover page of the preliminary official statement for the bonds looks like. Now, one thing to point out, that preliminary official statement is the offer document that is used to go into the market to sell the bonds. Currently as drafted, the preliminary official statement discusses a $9.75 million transaction in 2022. It would not take it would not be any problem at all to modify the preliminary official statement slightly to reflect that we would do one sale in the full amount of $13.5 million if that's the direction that you guys would like us to take this. On page number 4, we've laid out the current calendar of events here. As we are right now, a draft of this preliminary official statement has been circulated amongst the working group a couple of times to your team here. We have also had our ratings conference call. Marcy and Mr. Croson did a great job of representing you guys with Standard & Poor's in that rating meeting. We expect to get that bond rating back here within the next week or 2. Probably should get the bond rating back about 10 days prior to going to the market to sell the bonds. Now, a couple of things that need to take place between now and then, or are scheduled to take place between now and then. Number one, we have we would go to the city of Poth to discuss with them the upcoming financing, and then also on December 6th, we would go to the city of Stockdale to also discuss this financing with them as well. And then if you look on page number 5, we just do a breakdown of estimated cost of issuance of how the costs might change if we were to do one strategy versus the other. And so I'll discuss that there. If you look here under the scenario, you see there it says 2 issues. And we break it down of 2022 EQ for 9.75, and then 2023 3.75 non-EQ. The punchline there is estimated total cost of issuance when you include the issuance costs, the underwriter's discount, and possible bond insurance or surety policy needed. In total, the 2 transaction strategy would result in costs of approximately a total of about $325,000 or $326,000 in total. That's if you sum those 2. However, the one issue option, doing this in one issue, would result in estimated total issuance cost of approximately $283,000. So a difference of more or less about $40,000 in issuance costs.
You're going to sell that to me.
You bet. No, I got you, I got you. And so then on page number 6, what we have done is, we have run the debt service comparisons of each transaction, what we would expect. And these debt service figures also include those estimates of issuance costs. So in each of our scenarios here, we included those issuance estimates and costs. And so what you'll see is, if we were to do the two transaction approach, calling the 2022 issue a bank qualified issue, total estimated debt service would work out to somewhere in the neighborhood of about $904,000 per year. The one issue approach, with it just being tax exempt, our annual debt service would work out to somewhere in the neighborhood of about $910,000 or so per year. You notice over there, estimated annual debt service savings of approximately $4,000 to $5,000. Currently, right now, it's about $116,500. I think we could see that range, really range in actual pricing, probably somewhere between $75,000 and $150,000 over the life of the issue.
To do the two issuance.
To do the two issuance, okay? So it could potentially save we call it $115,000, $116,000 over the life. However, as Bob alluded to, and we can look a little bit more here in page number 2, or section number 2. As Bob alluded to, we've been in a very volatile interest rate environment over the course of the past year. Within the past week, since about last Thursday, municipal bond interest rates and interest rates in the general bond market have actually come materially lower. We've seen interest rates decline by approximately 25 basis points here just within the last week. All that being said, normally we would expect the delta between bank qualified and tax exempt bonds to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 basis points or so. So I think in normal conditions, we get a great result by breaking it out. However, under the current conditions and with the current strength in the municipal market, it very well may behoove Phelps to say, you know what, let's just lock it all in at one time. By doing so, number one, you reduce the issuance costs, right? The issuance costs are a little less. Yes, sir.
If we do it all at one time, and let's say interest rates get favorable 10 years from now, would it be easier to refinance if we had one issuance rather than two?
Quite frankly, I think it would be easier to refinance if you had one issuance.
Okay.
If you had one issuance.
So that plays into
These bonds we currently expect will have either a 9 or a 10-year call feature on them, either series. We'll try to aim for a 9-year call feature, but we don't want the investors in the bonds to give us a punitive interest rate for that 1-year flexibility. So if it has to be 10, which is more traditional, then that's what we would do. But I think for sure within 9 or 10 years, we'd have the option to refinance these. So, given what's gone on in the market just here very recently, and what is now a little bit of a difference between the relationship between bank qualified and traditional tax exempt, I think an argument could be made to just do these transactions one time. And one, you take some market risk off the table, right? There's the risk that between now and say January, the rates could move up a little bit further. And again, I mean, from our standpoint, I don't think it's not difficult to change our financing document to reflect a $13.5 million transaction.
and we don't see any problem with the city of Floresville as long as we do them in 2022?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is if we do them all in 2022, we're completely out of the city of Floresville's way for their financing plans in 2023. Okay? So you'll notice here, like for instance, just to give you an idea, I didn't even talk about the graphs here. But if you look at on page number 9, there's 2 graphs at the bottom of the page here. One graph on the bottom left of that page shows what's called today's MMD curve in context. That's the yield curve in which municipal bonds are priced off of. There's 3 graphs on there. The punchline is that graph at the very bottom is where we were this time last year. The graph that is effectively in the middle, that darker color, is the 15-year historical average. And then the green line is where we are today. So the short end of the yield curve right now is actually above the 15-year average. The medium and long-term portions of the yield curve, where most of your bonds will be anyway, is almost exactly in line with the 15-year historical bond averages. But then if you look also on, it probably looks better on page 11, you can more easily see this. The graph at the top of the page has got a call-out box to the right, and what that call-out box does is it really just shows the movements in 10, 20, and 30-year MMD since last November. And of course, you can see a dramatic increase in those rates over the course of the past year. But notice the downturn that's present at the very end of that graph. And that is a downturn that's taken place in MMD within just the last week. And really, that doesn't capture the full downturn, because I think that only captures the downturn through the end of last week, not what has taken place thus far this week. So,
What rates did y'all use for the projections?
we ran both of these scenarios using current market rates on tax exempt and current market rates on bank qualified. Plus I used about a 15 basis point cushion in there just because of 20 basis point cushion, because we're still not talking about issuing bonds for another 2 weeks at this point. I think our all-in TIC was working out to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 465 to 475 all in with those rates.
That's combining the 2 sale and then the 1 sale.
Right.
But
Yeah. I think they were about 10 basis points apart. And we were looking at about,
oh,
yeah. And really and truly not more than that. And quite frankly, we expected it to be more than that. But it really was not.
Okay, on page 11, it goes municipal market data, 30-year AAA rates. Are you saying that's where we are? We're AAA rate? Are we?
No, sir. You guys are not a AAA rated. You guys are A+ rated. That's your underlying rating right now from Standard & Poor's. We have applied to municipal bond insurers that are out there. Those guys have the ability to effectively lend you their credit rating. They are AA rated. And so every time, I think historically, it's a mix actually. A lot of times when folks have gone out to issue bonds, sometimes you've gone to the market with just your own bond rating, and sometimes you've actually had to go out and use the insurance. So we've applied for insurance to be able to use at least the AA rating.
And that's factored in?
Yes, sir. That's factored in. And you say, it's a great thing you point out there that it's AAA. That's how they benchmark the yield curve. They start that yield curve with the AAA, and then from there, the investors apply spreads to the yield curve based upon the bond rating of the issuer and market conditions.
This shows AAA, the graph shows AAA because that's the industry index.
That's the index. It's
Which
AAA.
one? Mark, and with respect to the history of Phelps, prior to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, we had about 5 municipal bond insurers that were AAA rated. So prior to that time, Phelps had historically taken advantage of buying municipal bond insurance to get to that AAA rating, and we had consistently marketed your debt at AAA based on that insurance prior to 2008, 2009. post the global financial crisis, there are no AAA insurers left. Your only option is AA. And during that same time frame, because of some reworking of the matrices, and because of the strong financial operations of Phelps, your underlying credit rating has gone up. So rating agencies, insurance companies have come down to AA, you've gotten closer to AA at your A+, so it now becomes a more fine calculation based on current market conditions. Is it worth it to pay for the insurance to go simply from a from a single A+ to a AA? And that's going to be a call. Dusty and the team are pre-qualifying the transaction for insurance, but the actual decision to make the insurance may not be made until a day or two before pricing, because based on what the exact market conditions are, it may not be beneficial to you to pay that premium to get to the AA rating.
Correct.
Okay, so today we need a motion to do either a double issuance or a single issuance, is that correct?
Here's where we don't have, here's where we don't have the bond attorney in the room. I think we would like to see an indication, a consensus among the board. We're going to have to go to the city council tonight. Based on what happened last Thursday night, I think we can anticipate some skepticism on the part of the city council. And if we go to them tonight with a recommendation for a single sale versus two, I think we're going to generate some additional questions. We'll just have to answer the questions, obviously. Explain to them the market changes since last week and why we were now recommending or at least considering a single transaction. But I think it would be helpful if we could at least get a consensus from this board as to what your preferences are.
So, did you sell me this?
Did I sell
Can
you?
you just tell me that it's better to do a double
No, sir.
than a single or a single? And
I feel like what we discussed is that the delta between the double sale and the one sale is potentially not enough
Yes.
savings to warrant the potential interest rate risk, and that we ought to give serious consideration to just doing one sale.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure that I didn't miss a point.
No.
And the benefit of doing one sale is that we'll do it all in 2022, and the city of Floresville doesn't have to worry about us messing up.
Any plans that they may have, if they're, like, for instance, I know that they are planning to go forward with, I think something in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 million.
So they're going to exceed 10 million.
They're going to exceed 10 million, but, I guess it's possible that their plans could change a little bit. They might decide to sell a little less, but in such a case, they could take advantage of the BQ rates in 2023. But that's not their plan based on what we understand.
And I think in the main, to be clear, Mr. Aiken, I don't think it's going to make any difference to the city one way or the other. And I personally would encourage this board to do what you think is in the best interest of your Phelps system. I think the decision is, do you want to take the interest rate risk to potentially gain the $75,000 to $150,000 in benefit, or do you want to lock it up now?
You're talking 100,000 on 9 million of interest. So in the grand
Over an
scheme-
extended period of time, you're exactly correct.
And with the opportunity to possibly even refinance that.
It make it
Maybe
better.
not though, what is the 30-year trend? We're
Right.
in historic lows for the last
Yeah.
2 years.
Right.
I've been doing this a long time. You will have the opportunity to
Well,
refinance this debt.
2 years ago, we
You should.
You should, yeah.
we refinanced some bonds 2 years ago.
That's right.
And saved $160,000 a year.
That's right.
By doing that, so
Right.
I see the potential to refinance these down the road.
I'm hopeful that, and Bob's correct, I do expect some additional questions possibly from the city on this tonight. And what we're hopeful for is that the city would give a thumbs up to Phelps' plan of financing. That Phelps' plan is to issue $13.5 million. And whether that's broken up into two sales or one sale, that can be a decision that Phelps makes. based upon market conditions. I would hope that to be the case.
You know,
The other way we're asking the city to, we're ultimately asking the city for $13.5 million.
We are, and that was a point that we did not have an opportunity to explain to the city attorney in advance. There was a question with respect to the resolution they were asked to approve, where one of the whereases said up to $13.5 million, and the city attorney, we did not have a chance to explain to her what the strategy was, because she wanted to have that resolution changed to $9,750,000. And Dusty articulated it exactly the way we ought to articulate it tonight. Our intent last week with the $13.5 million was to get you to approve and to acknowledge the overall capital improvement plan of $13.5 million, of which we're only doing $975 now. The bond council isn't going to be there tonight, and they're going to have a substitute resolution already amended to pursue a one transaction strategy, if that's what this board and what city council wants to do. So they will have documents to give them the flexibility to go either way. Let's just see if we can convince them that we're working in earnest to achieve the flexibility to do what's in the best interest of the federal system.
So Bob, if we pass this motion as it's written here, and the council comes back and let's make that 2 transactions, then we can just come back and meet again for,
I don't think that you need to meet again.
no?
I mean, this is just, the motion is to do the resolution for the preliminary official statement, and, I mean, I guess it's up to Stephanie, but.
This is a great question, Daniel, and Marcy's answer is exactly correct. This is all preparatory. None of this is binding. This board, nor the city council of Floresville, is going to take any binding action until December the 8th, when we actually come to you with price transaction. And the action that you take at that day, an action the city council will take that day, that is what will be binding. This is all preparatory, and we have latitude and flexibility here.
Our numbers guy, I want to hear from you.
I mean, I don't like risk. I told you I'm in Vegas very often.
Very often qualified.
But, so 2 questions. Yeah, I guess my concern is how, I mean, I guess it's the explanation to the city of why we would switch to one. You know, the recent changes in the markets, and then the potential changes with the economy and, you know, Congress and everything else that changed. To not, when would this second sale be?
Sometime after the first of the year, sometime mid-January, early February, I think.
And we'll have 2 FMOC meetings.
Well,
And from what I've heard, city council is going to want us to go back again for the 3.75.
I would think so.
We would have to. It's always been contemplated that we would have to go back for the definitive action on $3,750,000. Because of the way the city attorney requested a change in the resolution, now we would additionally have to go back for a second preparatory action. But under either scenario, we were going to have to go back to the city council for the definitive issuance of the second issue.
December 8th, we'd have to do that twice no matter what, but tonight, we probably have to do that twice too.
Now we will, yes, sir.
okay, we've decided that in order to make our little business run properly, over the next 3 years, we need to sell $13.5 million worth of bonds. Now, does that mean, can we sell $9,750,000 in 2022, and then maybe wait till 2024? That won't put any kind of crunch on our construction ideas with it. We usually spend about 1/3 of it per year.
Yeah, but I think that would lend us to more interest rate risk at that point.
We got another full year of it.
Maybe, really.
And often, you'll want the money in the bank before you sign construction contracts. And I don't know if we're going to have a single construction contract that's going to exceed the $9,750,000.
No, we usually go about $3 million a year for 3 years.
I want to hear what you said.
4
I
million.
want to hear what you think.
I think it might be.
We don't have
beneficial to the
anything
city,
in
right, if
20
we just do one transaction.
2023,
We have the.
I think it's indifferent to the city. I think it may be beneficial to Phelps because.
so what would it come up to, really?
But I think it's indifferent to the city.
Over 3 million? Okay.
But the cost to Phillips is significant if we go two more than,
Well, again, it depends on where the market's going. There is the potential, if the market stays relatively flat, that Phelps would be better off to the tune of 75,000 to 150,000 if the market stays flat. And that's net after the additional cost of issuance. However, what Dusty is saying, and I concur, is that there's a lot of volatility in interest rate markets. We know the Federal Open Markets Committee is going to meet twice between now and the time we can do your second sale. And there's the interest rate risk that markets don't stay stable because of the volatility, they go up, and that we may not save the 75 to 150,000.
Can you tell me that you don't think the interest rates finish going up?
No,
I think in the next 2 years, that interest rates are gonna go up
Maybe.
1.5%,
What?
I think. After the next 2 years, they're
We
gonna start
have
down.
seen Reagan years.
Yes.
And we may see them again. We could.
But not between now and January.
No, but I'm just saying, between now and 24, or now and 23. If we wait on the second one,
You know,
we can see a lot different.
I'm going to say this, I've been saying it for a long, long time. If I could predict interest rates, I'd be having this conversation from a video camera on my yacht in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Because I would be so wealthy based on my ability.
You wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah,
That's correct.
So, you know, we cannot predict interest rates. I can say that there's a strong consensus, and Mr. Lizzie knows what happens when there's strong consensus in the marketplaces. So, you know, often they're wrong. But, you know, the Federal Open Markets Committee, the Federal Reserve Board has indicated a clear intent to continue to raise interest rates to fight inflation. Now, how much they're going to raise it and
How long?
and how long they're going to keep them at those levels, we can't know. I think the consensus is that interest rates are going to continue to go up in the aggregate. We're catching a great bubble right now, but that bubble may or may not last. And interest rates are probably going to remain at a somewhat elevated level through 2023 and probably into the first quarter of 2024. But again, if I knew.
No. Listen, this guy's such a good salesman, I'm sold on the one deal.
Here's the other thing too, is we get that money to break that goes into higher earning investment accounts.
Yes.
For us, that is gonna make up some of that difference too, between splitting.
So if we can't talk the
the
city into this, what happens? Then they can tell us to come back and do it in 2 different ones, deal.
Or they may tell us to come back to another city council meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't think, I don't want to speak for the city. No, I don't think it's right for me to speak for the city. But I definitely think there's a way in order for us to be able to get this, there should be a way for us to get this done as one set.
I think so.
And discuss that with the city.
Any political help we would get would be nice.
Is there ever a chance we get out of this umbrella, or Phelps is intertwined with the city?
It's in the system agreement.
The city owns 2/3 of this company. But
Well,
Yes.
yeah, but it's written in the system
But we're tied with
agreement.
every
It
city,
could be
not
under
just
Phelps
Phelps.
or Stockdale, but the way the
It
system
could be
agreement.
standalone.
No, it can't, because we're not a standalone.
Yeah.
We're not a standalone entity. We're underneath those three, so it has to be issued underneath one of the three. And since the city,
And pursuant to that ownership agreement, the authority to issue the debt has been vested with the city of Floresville.
just total this on the debt of what?
Has been vested with the city of Floresville. So even though all three of the cities own the system jointly, the other two cities, Polk and Stockdale, agreed in the ownership agreement that was resolved in 1996 as a function of that lawsuit then, vested the authority to issue debt in the city of Floresville.
Yeah, we have a better bond rating than they do.
well, we have our own rating. We have our own rating.
Yeah, which is
so-
better than the city of Florida.
Well,
Yeah, but we're being sold on your rating, not that
Not that
rating,
rating.
because of the credit structure of the
Right.
transaction.
Okay, my deal is for,
We need a vote.
It's not on the agenda. The only thing on the agenda is to approve this resolution, so we just need a nod of which way we would like to go.
But a vote to approve the resolution.
Yeah, the
As
very,
either 13.5 or 9 point.
well, no, the very last sheet, there's 500 sheets. The very last one is the motion for the action.
Is it really?
Do we have to read the motion?
It's, you better if you do.
Wow.
It's the preliminary official statement, the
Pass
audit,
away.
and then the motion at the very end. That way you have to flip through all of it.
Page down.
Are we all in agreement that one,
well, from what you just said, it doesn't matter, we just got.
Well, no, you can't vote on it, but yes, giving your opinion certainly counts.
Yeah, but I was saying,
one?
I don't know, I don't hear you.
And that's what we'll take to city council.
Any other point to make, put out from them too? I think I heard they're gonna sell for us anyways on the 10 million or whatever. Theirs.
2023, they want to do their stuff first.
Right, so we're not affecting them, but it's also to make sure there's no concern that we would take up 3.5 of the 10.
Right.
Well, there's some technical stuff that Dusty's much more qualified to address than I am, and that has to do with federal tax law blending yields on transactions that close within a certain number of days of each other. So we're going to need to separate our 2023 sale from the city of Floresville's 2023 sale, just so we can avoid those blending yield regulations.
But, yeah,
We
what
said
about
that.
15 days?
It's not too much, but
Not too much.
it still has a little more risk and less
Yeah.
interest earning already.
That's right.
From our audit standpoint, all 13.5 now doesn't affect this versus.
You've got your rate structure in place to support what they said.
Can I ask Marcy your opinion?
I'm fine with one. I mean, I'm good with one.
Which way do you lean? I mean, do you think one is just as good or
Oh,
better?
yeah,
for us?
absolutely, because that was our plan of finance all along. We were just,
I just value your opinion.
Sounds like the only
I
concern
mean, I use
is,
it,
the only concern
I
is
don't use
what,
it, but I value it.
seems like the only concern is what the city would, think of why going back to one now. Instead of, originally it was 2, you come back to here, planning 2, and now go to 1. But as you said, y'all are prepared to answer that with the current changes in the market and our risk averseness.
But there was no opposition to one issuance, right? The opposition was more towards the language of the resolution.
That's what we,
That's our impression. Right. Their concern was being asked to certify something that they had not had a chance to previously review. That's the overriding concern that I heard.
And rightful concern.
Rightfully so, in my opinion.
So we're done?
well, we have to,
So you y'all get to the last page, or no?
Oh, we gotta go to the week.
Hold your right button down on the bottom right, hold that down, and it goes to that. Should,
Mine are,
here.
oh, there it is. It's got a delay.
So we just have to say this and tell them we'd like to do one.
Appendix
We could add
E.
one in here or something.
no, just go ahead and make this motion, and that's, we'll just go with the one for the city council.
Okay.
I'm glad y'all didn't make it real.
Well, you should.
Can we just do the
I
item?
emailed it
on
all to you too.
No, no, I said, I didn't make it ready to get it in.
Okay.
Can we just do the action item on the
Yeah.
agenda?
No,
Well, let me state the action item, I forgot to do that earlier. Consideration and adoption of a resolution by the Board of Trustees of the Floresville Electric Light Power System approving the city's preliminary official statement pertaining to the sale of obligations designated as City of Floresville, Texas Electric Light and Power System Improvement Revenue Bond Series 2022, complying with the requirements contained in Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board Rule 15C2-12 and other matters in connection therewith. Is there a motion by the board?
I'll make a motion.
Can you read it?
Period.
I made a motion, one second.
we have to read this.
You always read the
You make
motion.
it, go ahead, you read it. I don't have it on that page.
All right. make a motion to approve the adoption of a resolution by the Board of Trustees of the Floresville Electric Light and Power
Wait, which one are you on?
3?
Yeah.
Is it a D?
Yes,
This one, okay.
What two?
you're in the right one. He has a problem.
Okay, I move that the Board of Trustees adopt a resolution approving the city's preliminary official statement pertaining to the sale of obligations designated in the city of Floresville, Texas, electric light and power system improvement revenue bond series 2022.
Okay, have a motion? Second? Seconded by Ms. West. All those in favor? Yeah, it's 4. All right. That's it. All right, thank y'all very much, and we adjourn at 11:17.